Welcome back, witches. As you saw by the title, today we are talking about books that started my witchcraft practice. So I put up a poll and that was the winner. So thank you for everybody that voted. And it's actually going to kick off a 3-part series, which I'm going to sit here and film back to back. I don't know if I'm going to be posting them back to back. There might be part 2 next week. We will see how the schedule plays out, but I am planning on filming them all right now because I wanted to cover books that started my practice, books that changed my practice, and books that are my current study or future study, like things that I am interested in and going to start picking up more books on that topic. So those are the 3 that I have planned. So be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see those coming up. I really wanted to talk about these particular books, this topic, because I want to eventually go back and reread some of these and look at other beginner books and give you a list of whether I think they're still good. I have not read these ones that I'm going to talk about in years, so I want to go back to them eventually, see if they are still any good, if I would still recommend them to beginners, because life was a lot different when I started witchcraft and when I was reading witchcraft books. Like, these were all late 90s, early 2000s books. And the world was very different then. We did not have Instagram and TikTok and Discord covens, and YouTube wasn't even a thing until 2005. So it was a very different world back then. And you really only got witchcraft from books or movies. Movies is a whole separate topic. I think a lot of us got into it through witchy movies of the 90s and 2000s, like The Craft. And I think October is a good month to talk about some of those witchy movies. It's a big month for The Craft and practical magic, so we'll definitely come back to those. But today I want to talk about the books that were around back then. They were all heavily Wicca focused because that was like a Wicca resurgence that came about back then. And that was kind of the only entrance into witchcraft. Things are much different now. Such niche books out there. And still a lot of them in modern witchcraft have some things that we have gotten from Wicca, and there's been a crossover and a bleed of those traditions into modern day witchcraft. It's kind of hard to avoid, but especially in the 90s and 2000s, it was really heavily focused on the Wiccan religion. Not that that's a bad thing, but that is not where my practice is today or really ever was. Just kind of letting you know what laying the groundwork for what the options were back then. So first up, I have to start with the author that is probably very familiar to many of us that started at that same time, Silver Ravenwolf. I think she was probably the gateway author for so many witches of my generation, because at that time you could find her books anywhere. So they were at the library, but they were also in like big chain bookstores and sometimes even mall shops. So it was easier to find. They had, like the bright colors, like things that would just call out to you. There are 3 in particular that I remember. I think the first one that I picked up was Teen Witch. But I also remember Solitary Witch and To Ride a Silver Broomstick, which I think a lot of people still read or have on their shelves. And I should say, take this moment, that I am showing you pictures of these because I do not have any of them on my shelves. I was a big library person, so most of these I got from the library. And then from the time I was 18, went to college, I moved every single year, almost until we bought this house in 2016. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 years where I stayed at an apartment, like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but for the most part, I was moving all the time and I just did not keep any collection of books. This is the first place that I was like, okay, I think I can put books on the shelves, because books are heavy, books are hard to move, it's not fun. So this is the first place where I was like, oh, I can actually grow a physical collection. I always relied on library and ebooks. So I do not still have any of these in my collection. If I want to go back and read them and let you know how they still are, I'm going to have to find them at the library. Teen Witch, though, I definitely remember being in bookstores. And I think the full title is Wicca, like Wicca for the Next Generation or for a New Generation, something like that. So Wicca was in the title, and all of Silver's works are Wiccan based. She is a Wiccan. And I remember the Teen Witch book being very like friendly. It was like talking to like your cool older cousin or something like that, teaching you all the little like secrets of witchcraft. It's a very friendly and open book. There was like a lot of introduction in it of just what Wicca is and how to practice it, but then it did go into very practical things like how to cast a circle. There were affirmations and easy spells in it. I do remember this one like fairly well, I think. I'm gonna have to go back and read it and compare it to like my memory, but I do remember it being a very friendly, easy read, and it jumps into like practical, trying it for yourself steps right away. To Ride a Silver Broomstick was much more structured, and it just had a more serious tone than Teen Witch. I think it was like for an older audience. And it had all the information about Sabbats and everything like that, more about magical theory. And then Solitary Witch was a much bigger book and had a lot more of like the correspondences, because that one is more structured like a reference manual, like part grimoire, part reference. I think over the years, Silver Ravenwolf has gotten a lot of like criticism in the witchcraft community for like maybe her history is not being so correct, or it like being too fluffy, because she does lean on the Wicca love and light side of things. So, I mean, that may be true, but I still think that she was a huge introduction to a lot of witches of my generation. So along with her sharing that it could be like a fun, teen focused like practice, on the similar side of that, but a little bit edgier, was Fiona Horne, who was like the rock star glam version of witchcraft at the time, which like literally like she fronted a rock band in Australia. She was just literally like the rock star glam version, but similar in like the style of books that she was coming out with. So I think Witch, A Magical Journey was like the first one that I picked up from her, but I do remember there being other ones. And the original like Witch, A Magical Journey had a lot of the same, there's similar information from Silver Ravenwolf, where like just like talking about Wicca and having like an introduction on philosophy and spells and rituals and like ways to get started, with like a bunch of personal stories in there as well. And it was like a much more bold take of it like being exciting and glamorous and something that you can like, make yourself more powerful and put that into your everyday life. And in general, just a like more loud, bold take than Silver Ravenwolf, but similar in writing style and target audience. And then I think from there, my practice went into a little bit more serious work. Like those felt a little more fluffy than the other books I'm going to mention. There was definitely Big Blue and A Witch's Bible, but everybody talks about those. I think a lot of people are familiar with those, and again, have not read those in years. So something I'll have to go back and look at. But I distinctly remember Scott Cunningham, and I do still recommend Scott Cunningham because I still have some of his works, like his encyclopedias on herbs and oils and something else, as ebook versions, because those are still really helpful works. Now, Scott Cunningham is, again, Wicca based, but like his whole philosophy is much more like spiritual, nature-based. His writing has like a much more gentle, grounded energy than Silver or Fiona. I think probably his most famous work is like Wicca Guide for a Solitary Practitioner, which again was really nice back then because there wasn't as much access to like having a coven or people who like easily finding a group who was interested in the same thing. So a lot of practice was solitary. So it was great to have a book to like explain how to do that. And I distinctly remember Earth Power, which was again connecting with the elements and not needing any like fancy tools or anything, just like working with nature, getting outside. And all of his books just feel like sitting down with a gentle, kind, patient teacher. It's really great beginner books. And the last author that I want to talk about that was instrumental in getting my practice started was Laurie Cabot. So Laurie Cabot is a little bit different in not being Wicca exactly. She calls it the Cabot tradition, like it's her own way of practicing. So her books are focused on her Cabot tradition. So she had Power of the Witch, Celebrate the Earth, and like Laurie Cabot's Book of Shadows. Now, unlike the authors, like Fiona and Silver were making it fun. Scott Cunningham was more serious, but very like still easy for a beginner, making it more of like a spiritual, like gentle practice. And Laurie Cabot is much more authoritative. So much more like taking it seriously as something to be studied and really bring into like the science and art of it all. So Power of the Witch really gets into like energy and your brain waves, psychic development. So that was like my first look at that blend of like science with the mysticism, which I still like to this day. I like all of the science behind it because I like to be able to prove things and like know that they're working. Celebrate the Earth was much more about the Sabbats and like that concept of the wheel of the year and having all 8 of them and how to move through the seasons. And then the Book of Shadows was much more about the tradition. Correspondences, spell work, meditations, like healing techniques. It was like you were taking a class from Laurie Cabot. So she definitely has a weight to her writing, and it sort of felt like graduating from like light, fluffy, fun, like things that were more like the movies, and into something that feels more like a discipline that takes study and something that you can like grow in and get better at. So those are the 4 that I really wanted to highlight. Silver Ravenwolf for making it fun and accessible, Fiona Horne for making it bold and exciting, Scott Cunningham for making it much more spiritual, personal, nature-based, and then Laurie Cabot for making it more serious and powerful. My practice has absolutely evolved so much since this time and reading any of these works, and it has been many years since I have gone back to any of them. So do let me know if you want to see that in a future video of just what I think of them now, going back and reading them, if I would still recommend them to beginners, especially to like teens and young adults. I will figure out where I can find those if you are interested. Do let me know in the comments if you are familiar with any of these, if you are still reading them in modern day, if you also like started at the same time as me and read a lot of these same authors. I would love to know. And if you're not, let me know which ones you did read as a beginner and which ones got your practice started when you were just a beginner baby witch. I would love to know. So let me know down in the comments. And if you made it to the end and you just want to let me know that you were here and hanging out and looking forward to the next little part of this series, then leave me your favorite witchcraft emoji. There's a wizard, there's a crystal ball, there's stars and candles. So leave me something below. And that's everything for this video. I will see you in the next part, which for me is going to be in the next 3 minutes, but for you will probably be next week. I'll see you then.